Hey guys, welcome back to another Weird Wednesday. I'm Ashers, and this is
Fred Lane.
Fred. How are you doing? Are you excited for Halloween?
Uh, yeah, not as much as we used to be. We used to get dressed up and uh, in wild makeup and stuff. And one time I had her father build me a coffin, and I got this really garish, ugly mask, and I laid in the coffin holding the bowl of candy. And when the little kids came up, I would just lay there very quietly, and they'd take a piece of candy. But when the older kids came up, they'd go to reach some candy, and I'd reach out and grab them, and they would drop their bags and run.
So you ended up with more candy at the end of the night? Is that what you're
Oh, I
saying?
want to tell you, I had candy up until New Year's Eve.
I believe that. I believe that. By the time this episode comes out, I think our listeners will have their candy counts, and still. But thanks for coming on. I'm very excited to
Well,
have.
I'm excited about doing this show since I met you, I think, in Erie.
Yes, yep,
You know,
at the High Strangeness Erie event.
that's
Yeah.
great. And I can remember my first thought. I wish I was younger and better looking.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I mean, that's what happens when you dress as the Men in Black. People are attracted to you for some reason. I get how Will Smith feels now. It was that was a really good event. It was cold. It
Are
was
you
very,
going to come? Are you going to come for the one this year?
I'm not sure yet. I want to. I need a. Oh, I don't need a reason to go back. I can go back anytime. But
You can go
I
back just to see me, and you'll understand why once we're done with this interview.
okay. I might take you up on it. But yeah, it was a really good event. I like Erie. Erie is a fun little place.
It really is. Yes, it is.
It's very interesting. And, coming out there, it was unfortunate to come out when it was so fucking awful outside because there was a lot to do and none of it was open. So,
Right, right. Well, we have a peninsula, which is
yeah.
very. Oh God, what a great place that is! A place just to walk and to see swamps and wildlife. It's just a great place. And growing up here, my generation, we spent a lot of time out on that beach.
Oh yeah, I bet. Well, we did go check it out. Of course, we went to the famous Beach Six,
Right.
where the UFO Bigfoot encounter took place. So, very, very interesting. It's an experience, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, I was a witness. I saw the object in the sky.
Really, the same
Yeah.
object.
Yes.
Wow,
It was
very.
a little smaller than a dime held out at arm's length, and it was kind of reddish in color. And it was just sitting there. And then a plane came over, and this thing just took off, a blink of an eye.
Wow, very interesting. Were you at the peninsula when it happened, or were you further away from it?
No, where I live, there's the street next to ours is called Lighthouse Street, and it goes up to a bluff, and there's a big lighthouse there, and you can see the peninsula from there.
Oh,
Okay, because the peninsula is only maybe 900,000 yards away.
oh wow. Okay,
You know,
okay.
so
Wow, so close enough, to be
yeah,
clearly
right,
be able to witness something like that. Wow.
right. I was just a young lad at the time.
Yeah. Well, I bet it happened in the 70s, I think. I believe 70s,
60s, 60s.
60s. You're probably right. I think you're right. I think it was 66, the year of everything weird.
Yes,
Um, was a
well,
very strange time.
it was, and it's not too long after that we began to get a lot of sightings. One was at the Malmont Air Force Base in Montana,
Okay.
and this object came over, and there are 20 nuclear missiles there, and it shut them down.
Yep.
They were
I'm familiar with that story.
okay, and then it's not but a few weeks later in the Ukraine, same sort of object, same color and everything goes over the Ukraine. It doesn't shut their missiles down; it starts them up, and they came within 30 seconds of launching a nuclear attack.
Oh, wow. Can you imagine how embarrassing that would be?
Yeah, especially of the people on the other end of the attack.
Right. Devastating for sure. But then to explain, like, well, we didn't do it. It was aliens. We wouldn't buy that shit. We'd be like, fuck you. You did it.
I'm not sure that "fuck you" is in the diplomatic language, but I'm sure that
I think, what is it? What do they say? All's fair in love and war,
is that what they say?
That's what I've heard. Well, anyway, before we get into all of that, I just wanted to take a second. Usually, I'll share some news and things. I don't really have any. I'll be honest with you. For being spooky season, it's been slow lately. It's been real quiet.
Well,
Uh,
our sightings are up almost 30%.
really,
And, and, that, and that's a lot because usually in the spring, summer, fall, they go up around 5% because more people are outside. But this year, they've gone up a lot. And they're not just lights in the sky. People are seeing vehicles.
I wonder if that. I mean, do you think that has anything to do with the climate of Disclosure and Grush coming forward with his story? And I
Well,
mean, people are
it's
safer.
very possible. But
Yeah,
if you remember, do you know who the Anunnaki are?
I do.
Okay. They said they'd be back. And the
Okay.
release of the those three gun camera films from with Elizondo running the program, and then he leaves, and let him take three videos with him.
Yeah.
Seems to me like they may be preparing us for contact.
That's a really interesting theory that you have because I feel similar and a lot of people in the field feel very similar. And that's kind of what's different with this and for instance the disclosure of Project Blue Book is that it is different because there
Mhm.
is a reason behind it and I would agree that something is happening. I can't tell you exactly what. I have a couple theories, but
Right, exactly,
um
exactly.
I don't know, nobody's told me anything, so
How did you get started in being interested in UFOs?
oh gosh, that's a good question. I saw a UFO when I was 18, and
That was just a couple of years ago, right?
yeah, it was like 2 years ago. Wasn't that far
Right.
away?
I'm a
Um,
charmer. I'm a charmer, aren't I?
I'll take it. I went on someone else's show recently. They're like, "How old are you?" Like 24. Yes, I am 24. That's me. Um, so I saw one when I was 18, but I was never really interested in UFOs. Now I live in a suburb of Dayton, Ohio, so I live right next to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and I was always into cryptozoology. I liked, the idea of unknown animals that we just haven't
Mhm.
discovered yet. But when it came to aliens, I didn't want to think about that stuff. It was scary.
Yeah.
And I saw a UFO, and it was the most anticlimactic experience of my life. I was outside. It was probably between 2 and 3 a.m. And it was like a car. It was just two headlights. It was so
Mhm.
weird. And
Yeah.
it just kind of slowly approached. And then I was scared. I was very scared. So I went in my house. Um, I had come across a Craigslist ad um, maybe a year after that sighting, and it was
Mhm.
from allegedly a student at Wright State University. He was going to film school there, and that's what he said. I'm a film student at Wright State. I'm making a documentary, student film documentary about UFOs. If you've seen one, let me know. So, hey, I took the bait, and I said, yeah, sure. I'll tell you my UFO story. And I meet this college guy, and he's older than I am, clearly, but he's a young guy. And we go out and have coffee, meet up at a coffee shop. I tell him what I saw.
Is
He had,
that what they were calling it back then? Going to
yeah,
the coffee shop?
yeah, that's
Okay.
what they called it. And we exchanged. I told him my story, asked a couple questions, nothing too serious, and that was that.
Mhm.
Except for probably, it was almost 3 years later, and I was on Craigslist again, and I saw the same ad, the same exact ad to a T. I'm a
Mhm.
Wright State University student. I'm making a student film about UFOs, if you've seen one. And I thought that was very, very strange.
Yeah.
What are the chances of two different students within 5 years of each other? Well, 3 years at this point,
Yeah.
making the same type of content. And then the other one never came out. So I think it could have potentially been a type of Men in Black encounter.
Okay.
I don't know for sure. That's just me speculating because it was so strange. Hell, it could be the exact same student and he's lazy. I don't know. Um, you
Well,
know,
my wife's a teacher. Would you like her to address that subject?
right. It was, well, maybe, because it was very strange. It was a very weird encounter, but I still wasn't into UFOs yet.
Right.
it still didn't really, it was just something that I didn't bother myself with. Always very scientifically driven myself. I wasn't into UFOs until I got into the field in general, and that started with the Mothman, which is a very kind of heavy, not heavy, but it's a kind of a long story.
Yeah, we're very familiar with Mothman.
Yeah, I went to the Mothman Festival in 2019. I
Yeah,
experienced.
that's fun, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it is very fun. It is.
Yeah.
It's huge. Even compared to 2019, it wasn't even that big. What
Right,
it is
right.
now. When I went to the Mothman Festival, I experienced a string of synchronicities, and it led me down the rabbit hole. And now, as a Fortean investigator with a heavy interest in cryptozoology, now I'm more of a ufologist than anything, and it's so strange how that happens.
Yeah. Well, I started out getting into UFOs when I was in the third grade at St. Anne's Elementary School here in Erie. And for some reason, every classroom had bookshelves in the back with maybe 50 books in them. And once every 2 weeks, you could go pick out a book, take it home with you, read it.
Sure.
Well, they had this book on UFOs. I
Interesting.
couldn't believe it. I picked it up, and I didn't realize that this is a Catholic school. And what is this doing here? And I took it home, and I read it. And the next week, I took it out again. And then we were real close to summer break, and I took it home, and I never returned it. And I'm figuring I owe the Catholic Church probably around $70,000 or $80,000 in late fees. I'm just saying.
Yeah, because that was what, in like the 1700s when that happened?
You're very funny. I hate you. No, it was in the 50s.
Well, that is interesting. The time period is interesting because it
And
was.
then after that, I got a hold of Donald Kehoe's book, Flying Saucers Are Real.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I got a hold of that and read it. And then everything, kind of quieted down until the sighting at the peninsula, and then I got really back into it again.
Wow, so it was that sighting that got you on this path. Really, it sounds like you had some interests, but it sounds like it took your own experience to get you where you are now. So let's back up a little bit, Fred.
Sure.
Who are you and what do you do?
I'm Fred Lane, and I'm retired. I worked with the EPA as an instrumentation tech for 30 years. Before that, I've been married for 50 years. And
Congratulations.
thank you. It's more my wife's doing than mine. She's a wonderful woman, incredible woman. To put up with me, trust me, she's an incredible woman.
Husbands always say that. I don't.
And then I spent a little time overseas during Vietnam, and when I came back, I became an advocate for civil rights and women's rights, and now the gay rights.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty much I became a hockey coach. I played college hockey, and I became a hockey coach here at Gannon, started the program there, and then became the first coach at Mercyhurst before I retired.
Wow.
I had a myriad of other interests, but I don't know.
About MUFON.
Yeah, I got into MUFON when we moved back into my old house. When my parents died in the neighborhood I lived in. When I was growing up, it was a completely white neighborhood, completely white, and all the women stayed home and cooked, and housewives and everything, and all the men went off to work. Okay, it's the 50s. And then we moved back in, and the kids in the neighborhood, they were all going to be either basketball players or football players. And Kathy and I looked at each other and said, "Oh, we got to change this." So what we did was we started Wild Wednesdays.
Oh.
And what we would do is we'd bring in a speaker to talk, and we'd take them up to the lighthouse up there, and we'd have some refreshments for them and have somebody talk to them on ghosts and UFOs and how to have fun staying fit and just stuff that they could might use or be interested. And then we would took them all out one night to see the Perseid meteor showers, have them lay on the ground and watch the meteor showers. And we started getting these kids more interested. And then we decided some of these kids were having problems reading, so we started going collecting books. We have, Kath, about 150 books? 300. We had 300 books on our front porch, and it was a library. The kids could come over once a week and get a book and take it home and read it. And if they couldn't read, we'd help them read. And let's see, what else?
But you didn't say how you got into MUFON.
Okay, how I got into MUFON was one of the speakers was talking about UFOs and stuff, and he was going to go down to a conference in Pittsburgh, a MUFON conference run by John Ventry. And I said, let's go down to that. So we went down, we walked into where it was, and we looked around, and I looked at my wife and I said, we could do this better in Erie. And
Sure.
so we got a hold of John, and we brought him up to Erie, and we had him throw out the first pitch at a ball game because he was a big Tiger fan, and that's the Tiger franchise up here. And we were walking back, and I said, we need to have a conference up here in Erie. And John goes, yeah. He said, I agree with you. And I said, oh, by the way, John, we're going to donate at least $1,000 to charity. He never batted an eye. And so through the conferences that we had, we raised, probably around $10,000 for charity.
Wow.
Because I don't do anything if it's not for charity.
Sure.
I'm going to waste my time just, to massage my ego or something is craziness.
Sure.
And anyway, that's how I got started in the MUFON. I became an investigator up here, and now I'm the state section director and lead investigator, a member of their STAR team.
Wow. So are you still actively investigating with them?
Oh yeah, we've got a case that we're going to be calling a gentleman here on Wednesday.
Wow.
Who reported a sighting that he saw. Like I said, our sightings have gone up.
Yeah.
We've had several cases over the summer. Some of them are really easy. See, my wife and I, we go into an investigation as skeptics.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we operate on Occam's razor. We eliminate all the possibilities, and whatever's left, no matter how improbable, it's probably the right answer.
Yeah.
And so that's how we operate. And we had this one woman, she was being followed by this UFO, and it followed her, and she pulled into the Kmart parking lot, and then it disappeared. And when she came back out, it was up there again. What she was seeing was Venus.
Oh gosh. And it was following her.
And it seemed to be following her, right. And we've had that. We've had people report SpaceX. We had one gentleman report a case, and there was nothing we could do about it because the case happened 45 years ago, and he finally reported it because he'd had a near-death experiences and he wanted to get it off his chest.
Wow, interesting. What was his experience like?
Pardon me?
What was his experience like?
Kath, help me out here.
That was the experiencer one.
Oh boy, God, I have to. Oh, geez, that was a while ago too. He had his sighting. He called the police. The police had come and did an investigation, but other than that, I don't quite remember.
That's okay.
That case. But then when I retired, we decided that we were going to take a train trip out west to the Grand Canyon. Well, on the way to the Grand Canyon, I said, Kath, Roswell's on our way here. So we stopped at Roswell, and that's where I met Edgar Mitchell.
Yeah.
And Edgar Mitchell, of course, was the sixth man to walk on the moon.
Mm-hmm.
And his wife and my wife were in the ladies' room together. And I looked at him. I said, aren't you Edgar Mitchell? I said, what went on the moon? And he said, you mean did we go to the moon or not? I said, no, I watched Walter Cronkite. I'm pretty sure he wouldn't have lied to us. and he laughed a little bit, and he got real serious. He said, we were never alone up there. None of us.
Interesting.
He said Armstrong and Aldrin, they were afraid to get out of the lander. And he says they used to have they'd say, we see Santa Claus. Excuse me. And that was a code word for they've seen a UFO. And they would use these little code words to let NASA know that they were seeing something, And Edgar said that the moon is a very odd place. He said the craters are different diameters, but he said they're almost all the same depth. And that, he said, is a geologic impossibility. He said there's structures on the dark side. He said we took pictures and NASA airbrushed them, told us basically to be quiet. He said we put the seismographs on the moon's surface to test for moonquakes. And when we got back up into orbit, we dropped the lander and the engines back down to test them. He said they hit the moon's surface, and he said the moon rang like a bell for over an hour, like it's hollow somehow.
Wow.
So he said the next time you look up at the moon, he said, be advised, there is something up there, and it is watching.
Interesting. Well, there is a lot of, over the years, people have definitely, honed in on some pieces of evidence. like the lost transmission from Armstrong. It's
Right.
like a minute and a half of nothing, which is very unusual, especially for
Yeah.
sending people to another planet, or
Right.
rather, somewhere
Right.
else that's not here.
There's Apollo 17. I believe that was the last one. And they got out of their little rover, went behind some rocks,
Mhm.
and the camera never moved. It just stayed right there. And they don't know what they found back there, but they said that NASA did not want anybody to see what they found.
Never wanted to disclose. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and then you have
You heard about Randy Blaha, right?
nope.
The shuttle commander. He calls down to NASA and he says, the alien spacecraft is still right below us. And at that point, the transmission cuts off. And NASA has a habit of, if they see something or they hear something, NASA cuts the transmission.
Yeah,
See, what a lot of people don't know is NASA is funded by the Defense Department.
it is. Yep.
Yep, and you can imagine what happens. I mean, you've read Sitchin, haven't you?
Oh yeah, I have.
Genesis Revisited.
Mhm.
You can imagine what happens when they realize that the Bible, the Old Testament, they're not talking to God, they're talking to something else. Can you imagine what's going to happen when the Anunnaki do come back and they say, well, we created you? Oh, boy, oh, brother.
Yeah. Well,
You know?
religion is definitely one thing that I've discussed a lot, and how religion and alien life don't really mix together.
Well, no, I got one of my degrees is in theology, and it's there's just so many things that you look at, especially in the Old Testament. Once you realize in the Old Testament that they're not talking to God, this is something else. Okay, like when God descends on the mountain in Mount Sinai, and Moses comes down. Remember what happens when he comes down? What he looks like? His skin is waxy, his hair is white. That's radiation poisoning. That's why when they landed, they told him to keep the people away from the mountain.
Well, yeah, radiation will do that to you.
Yeah, and remember
Yeah,
great smoke and fire descended on the mountain. Why didn't he just appear in the sky as a giant talking head? That has scared the crap out of him.
Well, that's true. That's a good
Yeah.
point.
But the thing is that no, something landed.
Evidence of something.
Yeah, well, God
mechanical.
doesn't need a spaceship, obviously. I mean,
Right.
it's craziness. It's just absolute craziness. And so, and believe me, the religious folks, they do not want a lot of discussion about this because they know what would happen. Like I have a friend who's a priest,
Mhm.
and I told him, I said, when they come back, and I said they are coming back, I said you're going to be out of a job. I said you're going to be over at McDonald's going, you want fries with that?
Exactly. Yeah, that's where it's at right now. I mean, that's the issue with organized religion, is that it's very much a business.
Oh, absolutely, it is.
That's why the guys on like Finding Bigfoot will never find Bigfoot, because then the show's over.
Yeah. Well, the Bible, it was originally, I think, 80 some books.
Oh yeah.
But Constantine didn't like see, Constantine called the Council of Nicaea, I believe it was, and he redid the Bible so that it would match his agenda. So they cut out books like the Book of Enoch. Okay, Enoch was the father of Methuselah.
Mhm.
Methuselah was the father of Lamech. Lamech was the father of Noah.
Interesting. So I'm not.
And Noah was another one of those. Lamech comes home from being away for a long time, and his wife is pregnant. And of course, he'd like to know why.
Sure.
And but that's another one of those births that come about from the woman supposedly not knowing, who impregnated her.
Yeah.
There seems to be a lot of that going around in the Bible.
There is, yeah. There's well,
Seriously, I'm surprised that Hugh Hefner didn't have some part in this.
with all the impregnation. Well, so are you saying that there's a potential that these women being impregnated are being impregnated by an alien race? Is that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a connection there, right?
Sure, that's the best way. That would be the best way to change the DNA of the human population, especially because there weren't that many people around back then. Of course, Noah, he builds the ship and goes sailing with the,
Right.
But then again, you have to ask yourself, well, then who did those? I mean, did they all intermarry? Were they all screwing on the boat? I mean,
Right.
Because who's gonna repopulate the world.
Hmm.
I mean, that's nonsense. It's just
Yeah.
craziness.
Very true. Very true. Interesting. So why do you think that doesn't really happen a lot now? Now we have men that claim to be abductees. They're taken on ships. They impregnate these other, species, and then they're dropped back off. But we don't really have a lot of women making those claims nowadays. It's just not on the agenda right now. Is that? I mean,
Well, one of the things is that a man he maybe gives up his seed, but a
right.
woman, she's going to carry that baby, and she's going to go to the doctor, and the doctor's going to examine her, and you know,
It's going to be a big deal, right?
it's going to be a big deal.
Right.
Right. So what they may do is just take the eggs, when they abduct them.
Oh yeah.
Because we read an account of a woman who was taken aboard, and a few 6 months later, so she's taken back aboard and shown fetuses.
Wow. Okay.
So
Interesting.
it is. It's inconceivable that we're alone.
Oh yeah,
The
absolutely.
idea that we're alone and that the guy who thought everything up by just thinking about it, God,
Mhm.
he decided to take our little speck of dust and get personally involved with the minutia, which is our daily lives.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. It doesn't. No, there's the universe is infinite, and I don't think people really quite understand what that means, and that's okay. We're really not supposed to.
Well, you
get it.
can't. It's so big, you can't imagine it.
No, you
You
can't.
know, and even like where you are, okay.
Hmm.
I'm sure that you haven't been to every place there is around where you live.
No, I haven't. Yeah.
No, because it's big. It's,
Big.
So it's the same. The universe is so damn big.
Yeah.
You just can't imagine how big it is,
Right.
and you can't wrap your head around the fact that there was probably intelligences out there, and and they're maybe looking at us.
Sure.
I heard one the other day say, perhaps this is just a zoo. They're just coming to visit the zoo.
We're just entertainment. Yeah, I could see
Yeah.
that because
And I heard somebody else say that the stars in the sky are actually just holes punched in the top of the jar.
for them to look into it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it is a
Honey, put your toys away and come out and eat your Gazorian plat.
right. Okay, let me just shake this jar real quick, and then there's earthquakes all over. Do you think that we humans? Do you think that we started here on Earth?
Well, that's really an interesting question. Let me answer it this way. How many animals on the earth have eyelids?
Have eyelids? Well,
Eyelids,
a lot of them. Some of them
No.
have two.
They have eyes in besides, but their eyelids, the outer skin that folds, closes your eyes, we're the only ones that have that. There's some people that believe that we have that because we are another race where they needed those. They needed to have eyelids.
Okay.
I know there's so many interesting theories and stuff out there. Sometimes it's just hard to wrap your head around some of them.
Yeah, there are.
I had just heard that the other day, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. Not sure I believe it, but
Right.
it's interesting.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, and at the end of the day, when it comes to our creation and where we come from, none of us know. None of us really know, because then the rest of us would be out of a job. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I think it is fun to kind of speculate.
Sure.
I don't think that we're naturally occurring here. That's why we destroy the planet. But what does that mean exactly? Clearly we were abandoned here then, because we started off as a very primal species, and I do believe that we
Yeah.
did start off that way.
Well, if you've read Sitchin and if you've read the ancient Sumerian tales, the reason we were jumped ahead from the Neanderthals to where we are now
Mhm.
is because they needed a primitive worker. They needed somebody who could understand commands, understand how to work and use tools and things. So, because they needed them to mine the gold and the precious metals. Because remember Enki, he takes the group down into Africa,
Mhm.
the lower world, and he begins to mine. And when the work gets too hard, they have a big meeting, and they said, we need a primitive worker. We need somebody to carry the toil of the Anunnaki. And he speaks up and he says, the creature you named already exists. All we need to do is bind upon it our image.
Interesting.
Remember where Genesis says, and God said, let us make man in our image? That's why it's plural. Because you see, the story is what the Jews heard this story when they were in Babylon, because they performed it every for 2 weeks or a month over Christmas and New Year's, or whatever those holidays were. And they heard these stories. Now, it's 50 years after Abraham, who was from Ur, he was a Sumerian, when he leads them back to the Promised Land. It's some 50 years later they write Genesis. They can't remember the whole story because, let's face it, people didn't live that long back then. So this is a story that passed down, passed down, passed down. They decided to write it. And that's why it's kind of disjointed and kind of goofy, because they couldn't remember the whole story. You've played that game in parties, right, where somebody's told a story and then they tell the story to somebody else and somebody else and somebody else, and they'll finally get to the last person and they have to tell the story.
Oh yeah, telephone.
Yeah, telephone. And the story has some resemblance to the original story, but it's vastly different on several levels.
Yeah, it's right. And that is definitely religious text to a T. There was a point in time in history where we didn't document anything ever.
Yeah.
Which is why so much of our history is just lost. I mean, really, because we are a drop in the bucket compared to how old our planet actually is.
Yeah.
And there will always be, I mean, I guess some people don't really understand things like fossil records and how it's very incomplete because we're not capable of being able to have the whole story. We're just so happen to get lucky and find things sometimes.
There's people who think the earth is flat.
I know. It's a very good point.
I had a friend of mine say, why our kids are growing up kind of stupid, And I said, well, why? And he said, well, because that's the way that's the way the people who are running things on the earth want it, because they don't want to have to explain things.
Well, that's true. I mean, the thing is about it is that we are learning more. We're book smart, but the art of critical thinking is becoming lost. And
well, that's a great point, Ashley. That's a great point.
Right.
You're so right.
They just don't, people don't know how to learn things. They're just, I mean, when you look at things like public school systems and stuff, they're just given, here's read this chapter and that's it. They're not really told, they're not taught how to process that information. Right. And, I don't know, I guess I can't speak for everybody and say that was something that we ever had. I just think that, because information is so readily available now, we don't have to learn to process information. We can just Google it.
I work with the kids again, and I had a stroke here a few years back, and I work with the kids in their PT program. Because I'm able to tell them what it was like and what I did to overcome it and just different things, And I tell them, always question authority,
Oh, yeah.
Always. I said, because they will lie to you. And then, I'll tell them a little bit about the Anunnaki and where the Bible actually comes from. And I said, the next time you go into religion class, you ought to ask the professor, what about this? Why is this story, why is the Genesis story just like this ancient Sumerian stories?
Right.
Well, obviously, Sumerians heard these stories when they left, when the Jews go back. That's what they, I told you, that's what they wrote about. And there's what's the word I want here? There's a certain incongruity with religions, I mean, especially since there's so many of them. There's Jews and Arabs and Muslims and Buddhists and Catholics, and really, but we're the right one. But no, they're the right one. Please stop it. I'm begging you.
Yep. They are all very much like that. I tend to not judge people based off of their religious beliefs. However, to think that you have got it completely right, I think is very egotistical and says a lot about your character, frankly. That's
well, and I want to only just briefly touch on this because but look at these religious people who are backing the Republican candidates now.
Oh yeah.
I mean, holy cow. I mean, aren't you listening to them?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they wanted, they're trying to infuse religion back into our Constitution,
Yeah.
which is why the founding fathers, see, they all had come from Europe, where religion was ruled and people were put to death and everything. So when they came over here, that's why they wanted a separation of church and state. They did not want the state to be run by religious people.
Right.
And these religious people now, I always ask them, I say, what are you going to do if the Muslims get enough voting powers to take over and decided they don't want this, they want their religion? Because then what are you going to do?
Right.
Then what are you going to do?
And population wise, they outrule Christians by a huge margin.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
As far as world population goes, that's the most popular religion there is.
Right. Well, let's get into a couple of cases here, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Yeah. But
let's start with Roswell. Okay?
Sure.
Everybody's heard of Roswell, right? Well, here's the thing about Roswell. The idea that these guys mistook an alien spacecraft for tinfoil and cardboard and string,
right,
is absolutely outrageous. This was the 509th Bomb Group. Are you familiar with them?
No, I'm not. No.
Okay, the 509th Bomb Group is where the Enola Gay and Boxcar came from. That's where they trained. These guys would have been considered the best of the best. Mm-hmm. Okay, the Enola Gay and Boxcar, those are the two planes that dropped the bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. This is where they were trained. They actually had a couple nuclear weapons on the base on Roswell. So the idea that these guys couldn't tell the difference between steel and structured material and balsa wood and cars is just absolutely outrageous. It's outrageous. Not only that, but if they were flying these balloons, especially over this air base, they would have had to tell the air base that these things could come over and could cause a problem aviation-wise.
Right.
So again, this is just the Roswell story is just nonsense.
Yeah.
It's just absolute nonsense.
Well, I agree. I mean, the very first report came straight from the Air Force, and it said that it was unidentified flying object. That's what they said. Mm-hmm. And they weren't sure. They thought that it could have been some type of alien. That's the news that the press broke. And then immediately after that they were told to pull that story, essentially. That's what happened. Okay, well, that's what you said what happened when you first said it.
Sure. And we've had some cases. Like, we had this one case. Young man was getting ready to go to his graduation, and he had his suit and everything on, and his parents were slow getting ready. So he walked out of his house and down his driveway. They lived kind of a rural area. And he walks down the driveway, and he sees what he described as mountains hanging upside down.
Interesting. Okay.
And he is there, and then the next thing he knows, he's looking at him. I think it was south, and then the next thing he knows, he's looking west. And he goes back into the house, and his parents are frantic. Where the hell have you been? He says, what do you mean? He said, we've been looking all over for you. He says, well, I was just down the driveway. His father says, no, I was down the driveway, right to the street, and you weren't there. And they have no idea where he was for about 15, 20 minutes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We had another case where guys were out hunting, and they told the younger one to stay back. They were going to go out in the woods and see if they could flush some deer. Well, he's standing there, and all of a sudden this curtain, and that's the only way he could describe it, was like a curtain that you could see through, but came down and separated him from the woods. And he could see his father and his brother, but they couldn't see him.
Interesting. A curtain.
It's another one. And then, oh God, there's so many cases. Geez. My wife and I had a sighting. We were down, this was 3 years ago, I think it was. We were down at the beach. There's a little beach right down by our house. And we went down there to, it was like in October, middle of October, one of those really nice October nights. And we went down there to, just look at the sky. And all of a sudden, up from behind the trees came these 3 white lights stacked, in a row, 1, 2, 3, straight up and down. We watched this thing, and this middle light of this thing kept pulsing, flashing, brighter white light than it was. And it got up, we estimated about 1,000 feet. Again, it's hard at night to judge.
Sure.
and this thing stopped, it turned, and then it began to move southeast.
Oh, wow.
And we watched it and we followed it till it got up to Dunn Boulevard, or up to East Lake Road, and then gone, just gone. And what was funny about it was that we ran into a guy who worked down at the one of the plants down there on the bayfront, and he'd seen this thing come out of the water. And he estimated it to be about 60 feet long, maybe 35, 40 feet wide.
Wow.
But he watched it come out of the water, watched it ascend, and then watched it move off. So,
Do you think that there are bases underwater? That seems to be a popular theory nowadays. Well, it's been out there for a while, but now it seems to starting to pick up steam.
Well, it does make kind of sense, because I think we've only explored 5% of the Earth's oceans, and there's some parts of the ocean we just can't get to. So that would make a perfect place if you wanted to establish a base, or excuse me, a base of operations. And that would be a great place to do it.
Lake Erie is definitely very known for strange lights in the sky, at minimum.
Yes.
At maximum, all kinds of weird shit goes on there. But we share.
Yes, that would come under the weird shit file, I believe.
Yeah, the weird shit file. Yeah, that's everybody's got that secret weird shit file in this field.
I'm glad my mother's dead. She'd hate to hear me use those kind of words.
Oh.
I'm kidding you. She swore like a 10th generation Marine. Okay.
But don't you do it? That's.
Oh no. Well, I was a Teamster. Well, part of what I had to do, I was part of the Teamsters.
Mm-hmm.
My job as an instrumentation tech, but I still considered blue collar. So I was part of the Teamsters.
Right.
And I'm not sure if you know who runs that organization, but I'm sure it is not the Boy Scouts.
You sure?
I'm positive. Hey, you want to sit in the front and watch the show? You want to sit in the back and look at the broads, huh?
Yeah, Lake Erie is a weird area. We share that lake. I get stories from out of there. Because like I said, we share it. So I understand.
Have you been on the base down there in where you live?
Yeah, of course. Well, I haven't been on the base proper. So what people don't understand, if they don't live near or have been if they don't live near an Air Force base, is that when you're talking about a base, you're not talking about a couple of blocks. You're talking, it's its own city.
Yes.
It's massive. It's a huge area. So there's a part of the base because it houses the National Air Force Museum.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes, I've been there.
Yep. And you can go there. It's free to the public. Anybody can go there. Actually, the first time I ever went there was during I had the show, and we talked about it so much because I had never been. For somebody that's lived here my whole life, I just had never gone, and we finally went. And when you go to like the gift shop, they're not hiding the fact that there's aliens, and it's crazy.
That's right.
It blew my mind. I mean, they've got books on it, they've got T-shirts, that say that I was at the Air Force Base and I saw a UFO or whatever. They're just very out in the open about it, and some people can say, well, of course, it's funny, they're just being funny, but I don't think so. I think it's a very easy way to disclose the truth while also not disclosing the truth.
Yeah, that's a great way to do it, is it? Kind of poke fun at things and people laugh. Because even now, like I remember about a year ago, we were down at the beach because we had a report, and we were down there, looking to see if there was anything we could see. And there was a police officer down there. We stopped, and I always stop and talk to any police officers and give them our card, because they're out on the streets a lot more than we can be out on the streets.
Sure, yeah.
And they make great witnesses. And I told him what we did, and he kind of laughed. And then I told him a couple of stories, and he wasn't laughing anymore.
Yeah.
I told him to look up the Elizondo videos. Have you looked at those?
I have.
Okay.
I have.
It's funny. Bob Lazar. I'm sure you know who Bob Lazar is.
Ooh, I'm just kidding.
And he has said that one of the things that he had seen, one of the saucers that he had seen, looked like a top.
Right.
And it's funny because the one black one looks like a top. And as it turns, the glow goes with it. And it's weird. I was talking with some of our other investigators. We thought, maybe they are able to see it because it's cloaking device isn't working.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
Right.
so
What's his name? They did the hearing with Grush, and then they also did it with the two other guys, and I can't remember their names. But the one guy is they're both Navy, and
right.
the younger one, his thing that he maintains is that these things are always here. They're never not here. And
Mhm.
it's just a matter of whether or not we can see them that seems to pose a difference. He says that they're following around, other ships and everything all the
Yeah.
time. Um,
Mhm.
and I think that that's a pretty good theory. Now, sometimes they do seem to disappear, take off, or whatever, but it's not necessarily because, I mean, it's just like they're kind of living in our atmosphere, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Without us really having any type of detection system to, to account for them. We can't
To
see them.
account for them. Yeah, exactly. That's a very good point, Ashley. Very good point.
So I think that that's valuable. I've seen things, I have a couple of like a series of photos that I took because it
Mhm.
wouldn't show up on video. And, I'll be honest with myself. It very well could have been a balloon, but I just don't think it was. Whatever this thing was, I just happened to see it looking out my window, and I go outside. I've since my initial UFO sighting, I've seen several.
Mhm.
And, it is crazy because I think that a lot of people are like, well, I've never seen one. You're just not paying attention, is what I think.
Yeah.
um,
Well, it's funny. We've run into people who told us, I never believed in this, but I believe in it now.
yeah.
And it's a sobering experience when you're looking up and you suddenly realize this isn't one of ours. This is something entirely different. And all of a sudden, all your beliefs, all your religious backgrounds, all of a sudden, it like that, it just goes away.
Yes.
It just goes away.
Right.
And all of a sudden, you're left with something that you can't explain. That is
Exactly.
very, very scary.
It is. And one thing that I try to do when I see a new one, I try to look around me and look at the people around me,
Mhm.
and see how they're reacting to what is happening in the sky. And what's
Yeah.
crazy is that they're not. And it's not because I'm the only one that can see it. It's because people are so engrossed in their everyday life and just surviving, and just waking up and just being a person that they're not paying attention to that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
We had a case out on the peninsula. A fellow was fishing. I don't know if you've been to our peninsula or not.
yeah,
Um,
I would.
okay, well, you know where the Perry Monument at the one tip of the peninsula?
Yeah.
Okay, and there's a little like bay, a little cove there, and the guy was fishing, and he got done fishing, and he wrapping everything up. And he noticed this light above the monument, about I guess he estimated around 500 feet above the monument,
Mhm.
and he's looking at this thing, and it's a orangish triangle, okay. And he gets in his truck and he goes up over the little bridge and down over to where the monument is. And there's a lot of people there, and he's standing there looking up at this thing, and nobody else is. They're either on their phone,
Right.
or they're not paying attention. And he tries to attract some of their attention. They didn't want to, And he followed this thing for a while until it, went out over the lake and just disappeared. But he was really stunned at how many people were there, and not one of them saw this object that he did. Not one of them was looking up or paying any attention to what he was doing when he was standing there looking up and holding his camera, trying to hold his camera up.
Yeah, it happens
So,
all the time, and that's what I tell people. They're like, "Well, I look for them." I'm like, no. If you haven't seen one yet, you're not looking. It's just the way. But then again, I might have the benefit of the doubt here. I do live right next to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is the home of all of the UFO study in the military. So I don't know.
you read Corso's book, didn't you?
I haven't. No,
The Day After Roswell?
no, I haven't.
Oh, you need to read that book. He was brought in. He was given a file cabinet full of stuff, and he said, disperse this to different industries and have him re-engineer it. And that's, he said, where we got night vision.
Wow.
And I think it was bulletproof vests, and there was another thing, and I can't remember what it was, that he had given to these different organizations, or different, like AT&T or whatever big thing. And he told them, you just make, a cover story. And so they gave this big, they would write up this big thing about how they developed this and everything, when really they didn't. They were simply back engineering
Mhm.
technology that they got out of Roswell.
Out of the crash. One of my one of my local people here, so his grandfather is allegedly one of the people who helped bring the Roswell debris to Wright Patterson.
Hmm.
So it is very interesting, and he'll be very honest with you. You know, from his perspective. Again, this is the grandchild of the man, right?
Right, sure.
He'll be very honest with you about what he thinks about it. He doesn't know. He just knows that once nobody really knew this. I believe his grandmother did know, but she seemed to be the only other one. They really didn't know this until he had died, and then they had
Hmm.
found, of course, all his files and everything,
Right.
and it kind of became a thing. And they still don't. I think he might have mentioned something on it on his deathbed, but it's not like it. You know, he grew up with it being the family secret. They didn't really know because they're trained to not tell about these things.
That's right. That's right.
Um,
Well, Edgar Mitchell, he said they told him when they took pictures of the stuff on the dark side of the moon to shut up.
yeah,
They airbrushed the stuff, just basically told him to shut up. And looked at me, he said, "I never shut up," you know.
yeah.
But they just can't. Gordon Cooper, was he orbited the Earth. I think it was 24 times or 30 times, and he had seen this glowing object come right at his ship and go right past his ship and head off into space. Well, remember back then, there wasn't anything else up there. There
Right.
was no space debris. There was no other satellites or anything up there. So whatever this was, it wasn't ours. It wasn't from this planet.
Interesting.
But they told the reporters, don't ask them about it.
Wow. Do you
And
think
they
it was a
didn't.
threat of some sort?
Yeah, they didn't. They didn't ask him about it. It was only later that he came forward and said, what he had seen.
I mean, the object. Do you think the object trying to kind of hurtle towards him? Do you think that was in to be threatening to kind of tell him, "Hey, get out of here. There's stuff up here."
I don't know. I just don't know. When you're trying to um, figure out what an alien is thinking, it's hard to do.
Sure.
Because you're worried about whether the Browns won on Saturday.
Right. That's very true. That's very true. So how many different because we kind of talked about different types of ships. How many different species do you think are out there that are actively in our lives or trying to be kind of in our lives in a way?
I don't know. When I hear all these stories about reptilians and this one and that one, I'm thinking, wait, wow, is this like Six Flags over Erie or Six Flags over the universe or whatever? Is this why they're coming here? Is just to look at us or watch us? I just don't know.
Mhm.
And obviously, there's got to be different species,
Right.
but some of it, like let me give you an example here. The little gay guys. You remember the little gay guys? They're all over the universe.
Oh yeah. Those
They're
aliens.
they're hanging out at Trader Vic's. The grays. Okay, the little ones about 4 feet tall and huge heads. They're probably not the aliens because they have no genitals.
Mhm.
They have no anal opening. There's no way for them to procreate or evacuate waste from the body. Yet they have these huge heads, and we're just, a lot of us are wondering on whether or not they're simply running program. They're
Yeah.
simply biological robots, just running programs.
Yeah.
And that would be the easiest way for a civilization to travel into space, because space travel is dangerous.
Right. Well, we know we've sent like dogs up there, so before we sent ourselves.
I'm hoping they start sending Republicans up there myself.
Well, they are starting to send billionaires, so we're getting better.
You know what? We'll send them up, and the aliens will go, no, we don't want, no,
Yeah.
no, don't want them. No, send them back.
That's everything we've tried to avoid. But no,
You know what, Ashley?
Yeah.
You need to cheer up.
I know.
I said you need to cheer up.
Yeah, the Greys theory is interesting. It is a very popular one. I think a lot of people would agree with that, especially because they are so emotionless and they have no characteristics to them at all.
Right. They're just running program.
That is a very popular theory. The Victor story. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Victor alien interview out of Area 51. I think that happened in the late 90s.
Oh yeah, I believe I did see that. Yeah.
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 Victor said that these things were a type of, the best way that he could describe them was more of a gaseous life form that they
Mhm.
could take on, kind of take on the bodies of other things in order to present
Right.
themselves in a more presentable way. When we look at things like the Men in Black, which some people speculate are a species of their own, they're trying to emulate being human. They're really bad at it. And
Hey, listen, so am I, but nobody busts my chops about it.
I know, right? Yeah, they're really terrible at being humans. And,
Yeah.
maybe that's what the Greys are too. It was an attempt to emulate us. And then they just kind of slightly got it wrong. And they just said, fuck it. We've spent so much money on these things. We're just going to leave it.
You know, the one of the things that could be another thing that we've talked about is that it's just the Greys. It's just one species, and yet they're able to, once they have, put you in the trance or whatever it is that they do to you, make you see that. So that when you go back and you say, "Oh, I saw lizards, and I saw Nordics, and I saw that," but really you didn't see anything. They
Right.
just planted that.
Right.
It's a great cover story.
Right. Well, because I believe interacting with these things leaves very similar lesions on the brain that trauma does. And not because it's a bad thing, but because it is an impossible thing for us to conceive.
That's a very good point.
And
Actually, a very good point.
I think that they try to do it this way to try to leave us as unscathed as possible. And so
Yeah.
I think that is an easy way to do it. I think they emulate our own folklore because they know us so well, and they know that something like gray aliens, although not everybody necessarily believes in it, it's an image we're familiar with.
Yes.
So therefore maybe not as traumatizing as what they may actually look like. And again, not because they're hideous creatures. I mean, the hell they could be. I don't know.
Hell, I'm a hideous creature. I mean, come on.
Are you leaving brain lesions every day when you?
I want to tell you, I'm dropping them like popcorn out of a bag with a hole in the bottom.
They're just doing what they can do to try to not disrupt our lives, and that's why missing time is so prevalent. I think missing time happens more often than we realize.
I would agree with you.
I think it just goes extremely unreported, and I think that there's a reason for it. And again, it's to make sure that we are pretty unscathed, because it can't hurt us if we don't remember it, right?
Right. Right.
We don't know what happened. So I think that is something that just goes underreported. I think people second guess themselves a lot. I know they do. I've heard them do it.
Sure.
You've heard them do it.
Yes.
Interviewing witnesses, and they're just like, well, I don't know, but I think. And it's like, no, you don't think. You know what you saw. It's okay.
Right. Right.
I think that is a very, it's something that we just do because we're told our whole lives that this doesn't exist.
Yeah. Did you talk with Travis Walton?
I haven't talked with him, no.
Okay, I had talked with him a couple of times, had lunch with him once, and he's an extremely believable man. He's very, very believable about what happened to him.
Interesting. I do.
And the movie that they made,
Yeah.
what happens to him when he's on the ship, is anything like what happened to him when he was on the ship. I mean, it's just totally different.
Totally different. He really didn't remember hardly any of it.
Yeah. Another person you might want to get on your show sometime is Nick Redfern.
I had a very interesting interaction with Nick Redfern at the Mothman Festival last year. I approached him to, kind of introduce myself. You know how these things go. Hey, I'm so-and-so. I just want to meet you and tell you who I am, and, let you know I know who you are. Anyway, and, when I started talking to him, he had a whole bunch of books. And and Nick Redfern has written a lot of books, and
50 of them, I believe.
Yeah, tons of them. And so he had all these different books laying on his table, and I'm trying to get in a conversation. I'm like, so where should I start? I had never read any of his books at this point. I've only read his blog posts and things. And so I was like, where should I start? I don't think he understood what I was talking about. And then I look at the table, and none of them are his books. It was
Yeah.
very strange. He was selling other people's books, which is fine. Hey, you know what? You can sell whatever you want at your table. But then, like, I was trying to like talk to him, and he seemed very confused about what I was talking about. So I stopped talking to him, and then he had later came up to me and had apologized. Didn't really, I don't know. He just apologized. I figured, hey, you know what? The Mothman Festival's crazy. It's fine. And then the conversation that we had after that also didn't really make any sense. So I
No.
don't know.
You know, the reason I find that amusing is because Nick and I are good friends. We talk all the time.
well, tell Nick to call me because
He's got a thing for Romulo's chocolates.
oh, okay. So that's how I need to break it.
How we met him, how we started met him. We went to Mothman with our granddaughter.
Mm-hmm.
Our granddaughter has special needs, and she was homeschooled, and she needed to write. She needed to do an interview. So we went down there. Nick, how are you? You know, and this is Lainey, and she needs to interview. Do you know he sat there for almost a half an hour with her?
Oh,
People came up to him and he said, "Excuse me, I'm doing an interview with the press here."
oh, wow.
And he changed her life.
Oh, that's very
After that, she was more outgoing. It's just amazing. And now she works as a theater hand, and she's 13. She's in high school, but she works as a theater hand, and she works in the Playhouse, and she does plays, and she's a cast member of a lot of plays and stuff.
That's awesome.
And and I just talked. In fact, I just talked with Nick the other day. We were talking about it, and I told him, I asked him how hot it was down there because we haven't sent him any Romulos for his birthday yet.
Yeah.
You know, and what a nice guy. I mean, what a nice guy.
You know,
Gee.
I'm chalking it up definitely to, again, it's the Mothman Festival, and you meet a lot of people, especially at these festivals. It's not a good time to sit and try to have a full-on conversation with everybody.
Yeah, and that's what was so amazing was he just took her, sat her down, and he just said, "No, I'm busy. I'm doing a thing with the press." That was just absolutely unbelievable. And like I said, it changed my granddaughter's life. It changed her life.
Wow. Yeah, it's there's something to be said for these people that do take the time out and show that just being a genuinely nice human being. You know, at the end of the day, I don't care what your beliefs are, as long as you're genuinely nice. And
Yes.
one of the people that was like that was actually David Pilates, which I don't follow. I don't believe in his stuff at all. Now, granted, I haven't deep dived it, but the stuff that I have found has been inconsistent. The research isn't good. However, I met him at the MUFON convention in Cincinnati, and you know, before I got to talk to him, he was sitting there with somebody who was very excited to meet him, wanted to tell them about their Bigfoot encounter, and I mean, he was very patient, took his time, and I think that speaks a lot to his character.
Yeah, sure.
Because, you know, we hear these stories day in and day out all the time, and sometimes it does get very exhausting.
Oh, yeah.
As exciting as it is, sometimes you close up the computer, you turn off the phone, and you're just like, don't talk to me right now.
Do you know Stan Gordon?
I haven't. So I was at Monster Fest. Stan Gordon was there. I'm familiar with Stan Gordon.
When were you at Monster Fest?
I was there in last year, June.
So were we.
You were in Canton, Ohio?
No. In Mars, Pennsylvania.
Oh, no. So this was Small Town Monsters now has put on their own thing. But Stan was there, and it was the first time that I'd ever really had the chance to try to talk to him. But again, these events are hard to have conversations. But I would love to talk with Stan Gordon.
Well, you know what? The next time I talk to him, I'll try to give him your address or give him your contact information and have him give you a call.
Yeah, absolutely.
He and his wife are good friends with me and my wife.
Yeah, he's a very he's a gold mine of information, and he's really into the file of weird shit. I'm sure Stan Gordon's is massive.
Oh yeah.
And that's kind of that's my thing. The weirder the better, you know.
Well, you know what? If you get a chance to go down to Monster Bash in Mars, PA, it's God. We've met Carolyn Monroe there. We've met John Wayne's son, who was in the Sinbad movies.
Wow.
Audrey Dalton, who was in The Monster That Challenged the World. We met Bela Lugosi's granddaughter, put on his cape. She had one of his capes with him.
Oh, very cool.
Very heavy. Cape was really heavy. I was surprised how heavy the cape was. But they have all sorts of really neat people at this, you know. Tom Savini.
I've met Tom Savini,
Yeah, he's there all the time. And another really nice guy.
He's a Pennsylvania native, I believe.
Yeah, he and Quentin Tarantino went to school together.
I believe that.
They went to school together. Well, Quentin Tarantino's a genius.
Yeah.
He's a certified genius.
Yeah.
Well, for that matter, I have an IQ of 140.
Oh, so also a genius.
Well, not according to my wife, but hey, Tommy, get over here.
Well, she's supposed to think that about you. It's her job, you know?
Yeah, and I went away for a while to Vietnam, and when I came back, they had changed stuff at the college, and so I had to take these different courses. I ended up with actually three majors: history, theology, and sociology.
Mm-hmm.
And the theology one comes in really handy sometimes because I have a lot of priest friends, and I just bust their chops. And the one priest says, "Yeah, we know. Okay, we know." And I'm thinking, well, what are you doing? Why are you telling people that? He says, because it gives them comfort.
Right.
I said, so does a vodka martini, but
Sure.
hello.
He sure does.
It gives me comfort.
You were in Vietnam with Tom Savini, actually.
Actually, I was in Cambodia. I was with an intelligence agency there.
Gotcha. Yeah, he went to perfect his makeup. Very interesting,
Yeah, he's a very interesting man.
Yeah,
a really interesting man.
It was Vietnam was an interesting time for, I think, a lot of people.
He also has a thing for Romulo's chocolate. That's when we go down there. We always take a whole bunch of Romulo's chocolate with us to give to the speakers.
That's smart.
Oh, you know who else? I met Riku Browning.
Very cool.
And what a nice man he was.
Yeah, very cool. Wow.
And there was actually two guys in the suit.
Really?
He did all the underwater stuff because he could hold his breath for almost 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And the other guy was Ben Chapman, and he was like 6'2", 6'3", and he did all the on land scenes.
Oh wow, I didn't know.
Because he was able to easier for him to pick up the girl.
And he's large, right? So
yeah, he's a little bit larger. Yeah, yeah. So
interesting.
Well, I know. As you get older, you get to be an encyclopedia of really useless information. It's incredible.
There's nothing wrong with that, though.
Oh no, we have a trivia team that we play on every Tuesday night.
Are you the champions?
No, we're not. No, we end up usually around middle of the pack. Every once in a while, we'll end up we'll win or we'll finish third or something.
Sure.
But there's a lot of really good teams there, and sometimes our people who can come for our team to these things, sometimes they can't make it. So sometimes instead of 6 of us, there's only like 3 of us. Which cuts down your ability to answer questions.
Oh man, so. Well, and I think that's definitely a testament. The fact that trivia exists as a thing that people can do in their leisure, and I know here, there's trivia somewhere every night of the week.
Mm-hmm.
It's a testament to the fact that I think a lot of people are into the useless knowledge bit.
Yeah, I know I am. I've got a head full of useless knowledge.
And then we created trivia nights so that way they could indulge in finally sharing that knowledge somewhere.
Yes.
I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm terrible.
I say it's a training ground for politicians.
I forget stuff. I like to learn about useless knowledge, but it doesn't stick. And
can I ask you kind of a personal question?
Sure.
Are you over 40?
I am not. No.
Okay. Well, when you get to be 70, you won't believe this shit you forget. What's your name? I don't know. I knew it this morning. It's just, let me look it up.
No, that's me now. So I'm worried about I will probably have dementia at 40. So at this rate, or something. At this point, I don't know what's going on there. I have to write everything down and I just won't, it doesn't.
Yeah. I have to do the same thing. I've got to write, I got to write everything down.
Everything. And, even though, like I said, the fun part about it is that I can learn a topic. And it's every time it's like I'm learning about it for the first time.
Yeah.
So,
I know. Hey, by the way, as long as we're here, write this down. Maurice.
Okay.
Chatelain. Chatelain.
Okay, Maurice Chatelain. Okay.
Yeah, look him up and look up his books, because according to him, he was in basically a secure room listening to the astronauts on their space missions, and he was talking about aliens and what they heard and what they talked about and stuff. So it's an interesting,
Interesting.
and of course NASA, of course, no, he never worked here. Just like Bob Lazar, no, he never,
Right.
but he did.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, that is, what's funny is that it's not funny, but some people, of
well,
course,
if it was funny, you'd be on the Sullivan Show.
it's hilarious. I couldn't be that popular, but I say fuck too much.
Oh my goodness.
That's a problem for people. No,
Hey, listen, I'm a teamster, okay? We use that word as an adjective, an adverb, a noun, a verb,
yeah.
pronoun, a modifying adjective, and the object of a preposition.
It's just part of your life. And my 11-year-old, she'll say it too. And I'm like, so don't cuss. And then she's like, well, you do it. And she's
Yeah.
not wrong,
How old is she?
11.
Oh my goodness.
She's
Oh my
11.
goodness.
I've always let her.
She
I've
good
always
student?
taught
She
her
good?
that there's a time and place for things, and
Right.
I think it works. So,
Is she a good student?
oh yeah, absolutely. She's an honor student. So,
Well, very cool.
she's in honors classes in middle school right now. So, she's very smart. As long as
Well, parent teachers day. Hi, this is my mommy. She's a weirdo.
yeah, yeah, pretty much. Parent teacher conferences are so strange. Doing anything with school and other, parents is always weird. But what's fun about that is that when I tell people what I do, they're never like, oh, that's strange. They always have a story to tell me.
Yeah, yes. You know what? That happens to us a lot when we'll say what we do. And people say, I had this sighting and I never told anybody, and then they'll go and tell us their story.
Oh yeah, they absolutely will. And whatever that story is, it might be, alien related, it might be cryptid related. Who knows, what it is.
Yeah. We were driving up French Street one day. And we had our MUFON magnetic stickers on the sides of the vehicle because we were going to a case. We pulled up to a light, and a police officer pulls up next to us, and he looks over and he goes, "Is that for real?" And the thing on the side of the thing is, we said, "Yeah." And he starts talking. I go, "Hey, pull over up there in the vacant lot." And he pulled over, and we started talking and we got to be friends, and he would come over for dinner, and we talk about UFOs and stuff. And I used to tease the hell out of him. I said, "You're the first police officer I've ever told him to pull over to the side of the road." And he starts laughing. And then he'd say something like, "Well, don't go. I'm on duty tonight, so don't go out because your face is, oh God, indecent exposure." And I'd say, "Yeah, go have another donut, you fat fuck, Jesus." Or Tim Hortons closes in 10 minutes. You better get going. One night we got laughing, and he got a call, and he couldn't answer it because he was laughing so hard. And I picked up he handed me the mic, and I went. And to give him enough chance to compose himself to answer the call.
Was he able to answer his call?
Yeah, he was. He was able to answer. And then about a year and a half ago, he died of COVID.
Oh,
We used to be my wife used to be his. What's the word I want? He'd be out on a date, and if the date wasn't going well, he had a time that Kathy would call him. And he'd say, "Oh, look, I'm sorry, but I got to go. I got an important."
Oh, okay.
So she would be, and he'd come down to wherever we were and sit there, And like I said, he was an incredible man. Incredible man. We lost somebody very special on our police force up here.
Yeah, police are, can be a really good resource for this type of stuff for sure.
Yeah.
They.
Well, anytime we see a police officer just sitting by themselves, we always stop
Mhm.
because you never know anymore with everybody's got a gun and stuff. So we always just,
Right.
"Hey, you okay? Everything okay?" Just checking, and start talking to them. "What's your name?" "I'm Officer Bob or Officer Smith." And I'd say, "Really?" I say, "When you came out of the womb, your mom and dad said, 'You know what? Let's call him Officer.'"
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry. So it's Bob." "Oh, hi, Bob. Hi, I'm Fred. This is my wife, Kathy. And this is what we do." So, we'll be sitting down at the lake and we'll have police officers come up, "Hey, Fred, Kathy, how you doing?" "Oh, pretty good." "Anything new?" No, nothing new, And then the one beach that we sit at, you're only allowed down there till 9:30. And if you're there after that, it's a $300 fine.
Mm-hmm.
No, it doesn't apply to us.
Oh.
Because we know most of the police officers and they come down and just sit and talk, until they have to go back onto patrol.
Sure.
So, but it's a good idea, and I tell any MUFON investigators, make sure that you uh, make contact with the police. And when you see a police officer by himself, stop, talk to him, give him your card. I said, because these guys are out there all the time and they make great witnesses.
Oh yeah. Well, and not just witnesses. I mean, just even third party witnesses, because people will call the police when they have a UFO sighting. It happens a lot.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll be one of the first people on the scene to talk to these witnesses.
You're exactly right, Ashley. You're exactly right.
And it's a good idea to have that resource. So then that way that, that police officer may not be able to help them in that way, but they can go, hey, I know someone that can.
Yes.
Then they give you, give them your number. So
yeah.
it's
we actually had him bring a police officer over to the house one time,
mm-hmm.
and the police officer had a sighting, and he knew that our friend was into that, and he says, listen, you need to talk to these people. So he brought him over and talked to him about, what happened and everything,
Right.
And that's happened a couple times with police officers that have come to our house then and
Right.
said, we understand this is what you do, So
yeah, their job is to be observant. That is what they do, and so and usually they are outside. So
yeah,
observe.
You know who else is outside that we've given our cards to and make contact with?
Who's that?
Fire department.
Fire department is also a good
Sure.
one.
Well, sure, because they sit outside a lot in the summertime. In the spring, they'll sit. Man, you see them sitting outside in their chairs outside of the firehouse,
Mm-hmm.
Waiting for a call or whenever. And they also make good witnesses.
Yeah, it is a good one, and it's deemed, I guess, to regular people credible, compared to just, Jim Bob down the street that saw, that talked to aliens one time. People don't tend to buy those stories.
Yeah. Well, you have a Jim Bob on your street too, huh? Wow.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I think all neighborhoods have a Jim Bob.
Well, there's at least one Jim Bob.
I saw it over there, right up behind the thing there with the thing, and I was drinking out of the jug.
Yep, I got my Jim Bob.
I got my Jim Bob.
Definitely become known. I guess that was going to be my other thing. What advice do you have to people that are aspiring to get into ufology and investigation? What would you tell them to start?
Well, first you have to join MUFON. Okay,
sure.
That's the first thing you have to do, and then there's a test that you have to take. It's over 100 questions. Okay. And the thing is that you get a manual, and the manual is 100 and some pages long, and you read it, and then you take a test on that manual, 100 questions on and you have to get at least 80% to become an investigator.
Mm-hmm.
So they're very serious about making sure that they get people that really, really are interested in doing this, because it does take a little bit of time and effort to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I noticed that locally, which is sad because MUFON started here in Cincinnati, Ohio. Our MUFON is not very good. I think that they're not appealing to the younger folk a lot.
Yeah.
Now I hear that the different chapters of different states definitely run things a lot differently.
Mm-hmm.
Some have better conventions than others. Some have just more people. Why do you think that is? What do you think that MUFON could do to get more people interested in the organization?
Well, you have people that okay, I work for MUFON and that's it. Okay. Now, Kathy and I, we take a different track to it. We talk to people all the time. And like we have shirts that say MUFON Investigator on them.
Right.
And like when we go out to a store like Walmart or something, we wear them. Can't tell you how many people will come up to us and say, hey, is that real, or do you do that? And you start talking to them. You give them your card. And that's how we do it. And we must have given out, 1,000 of our cards at least to people. And anytime we see police officers, always stop and do that. But there's a little bit of a process to it, and we take it very seriously.
Right.
And that's why we do the sky watches, and we go to different things like different church functions or a little festival. They're all over, little festivals that they have in the spring and summer. Different groups. And we always go there and hand out our card, talk to people, and inevitably we'll find comments. I had this sighting and I never told anybody, and that's one thing that we get a lot of.
So you
But anyway, that's the way we do it.
you
That's the way
advertise
we can. We
just
advertise.
right
Yeah, exactly. We
immediately.
advertise,
Right.
and uh, we get a lot of people that will send us an email or send an email to oh, I met them and I have a sighting and then it gets kicked back to us, and you know but yeah, but we're very serious about what we do,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, and you're not afraid to talk to people, and I think that that's extra important. You can't be afraid to talk to people. Your business, when
right.
you're an
Well,
investigator, your business is people.
yeah. Well, I used to write a column for the newspaper, and I've done some television and radio stuff, so I'm used to talking to people, and I'm
Right.
used to being outgoing and uh, getting people involved in a conversation, and listening to them, and I'm not trying to talk too much, but listen to what they're saying.
Right.
Listening is a really important thing that you need to do, is to be able to listen.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is learning how to tell whether somebody's lying or not.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know how you do it, but what we do is we'll listen to somebody start telling their story, and about halfway through the story, we'll say, "Wait a minute. Did you say that this happened at this time, or did you say?" Taking them back to like the beginning of their story or half the quarter of the way through, and then see if they can pick up the story from where they left off, or whether they have to almost start the whole thing over again.
That's a really good tactic, actually. I talk to people I have them tell me their story multiple times at different points.
Yeah.
And just kind of analyze from there. And then also I will infiltrate their lives. I become really friendly with my experiencers. And the
Yeah.
thing is that if you find that person tells little white lies about other things in their life,
hmm
chances are, some of their
Chances are.
story is probably
Isn't that
not.
a song by Johnny Mathis? Chances
Yeah.
are. Oh, no.
Right.
Sorry.
They're
Every once in a while, the 50s creep in.
you enter a portal. You have a little time loss there.
Of course I do. Is that what they're calling it now?
Slip through. So have you had any extra close encounters besides UFO encounters?
You mean like a cryptid?
Well,
Something like that?
not necessarily. Just have you ever had any? Have you ever made contact with one of the?
Well, I had this one girl I dated. She was a little weird. I'm not sure that counts.
Well, it might. She might might not have been human. But have you ever made contact with anybody from that you believe is from not here?
No, I have not.
Okay.
I have not. I don't know.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, well, they might be avoiding me like the plague.
Right.
No, don't talk to him. He's nuts, man. Jeez.
Stay away from that Fred guy. He's
Let's take him to our planet. No, pal. No, we're not taking him. I don't care what you say. We are not taking him.
anybody but him. Kathy's all right though.
Oh yeah, Kat, we'll take her. She's a little bit, more, stable.
That's a good chance. It could be. I do always find it interesting. Not everybody that studies this stuff is a contactee.
Right.
And of course we want to be, right? We wish.
Well, there's times, yeah, but then we've done some stories. I say, I don't know. I don't know if I woke up and one of these things was standing in the room.
Yeah.
And I'm an 8th degree black belt.
Right.
And I'm always afraid that I might, flip out.
Yeah.
And, and I'd hate to kill an alien. I mean, that would really suck.
I know. You just feel terrible.
Oh, yeah, especially if you start an interplanetary war. I mean, people are not going to ever forget that.
Right. Then you got to go to alien court.
They're going to write your name down and make sure that everybody remembers it.
Right. It's very true. Very well, and I wish that it could be a more, if I were to have a meeting with one of these guys, I wish they'd just come knock on the front door, right? Be like, hey, what's up? But they don't do that. You're right. I think they're horrifying. And
Does the word naive mean anything to you?
tons. But that's what Pat used to say on the show. He'd be like, don't tell people, because one of my special areas of interest is Indrid Cold, which Indrid is just he's not from here. He's from a different planet, but Indrid is a human. He looks very much like a human. And, he's like, you better be careful. You're going to have people, coming up to you at conventions. And cause I used to joke about fucking Indrid. And, I'm like, hey, if that gets me in contact with them, I'll do what I got to do. He's like, well, they're going to start coming up to you at conventions claiming that they're Indrid Cold. And what are you going to do? Not believe them? Like, well, fair enough.
Yeah. Hey, let me
But you
ask
do what you got to
something. Are
do
you
for
having fun
science.
so far?
So
Oh yeah, absolutely,
so far,
absolutely.
yeah, so
Are
far.
you having Are you having fun so far?
And investigating, absolutely.
No, just talking to me.
Yeah, of course. I love doing my show. I love talking to you weirdos.
Oh, weirdos! Wow.
Weirdos. Yep.
Oh, I've been called a lot of things.
You weird ones.
I'm a weirdo. What's that, Kat?
Not true.
That's not true. She's like, I call you that every morning. What are you
50
talking
years we've been married.
Oh man, I can't even imagine.
Really? Sometimes we can't imagine. You know,
I bet.
I told you I work with the kids again in their physical therapy program, and I always tell them when we were talking to them, and I say to them, listen. So you realize, I said, if you're 25 years old, the average lifespan of a human being, a male, is 73, and for a woman, it's 78. So I said, I hate to break this to you. I said, but you got about 50 trips left around the sun. Some of you will have a few more, and some of you will have a few less. Don't waste it doing stupid stuff.
Oh yeah.
Go out there, go take your partner and go find a deep pool somewhere and make love, or walk in the woods. Make memories. I said, because when you get to the end of your life, I said, that's the only thing you're gonna have left.
Yeah.
And the more memories that you have, the more the easier it is to get through those tough times when you get older.
Right. Well, absolutely. And Fred, you just said it yourself earlier in the show. You mentioned your age. So we know how old you are. So you've surpassed that life expectancy. How do you feel?
Like there's sort of Damocles is hanging over my head.
Fair. Any minute now.
What's neat is a lot of people who are listening to this are going to go, sort of Damocles. What the hell is he talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it's, because you sound like you're in good spirits. I know that you did have some health issues.
Well, I'm not dead yet.
No, but you had a stroke, which is a big deal.
Yes.
Which is a big deal.
I had a stroke. I was in the hospital for 3 months, Kath?
Mm-hmm.
And
In a nursing home.
in a nursing home.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd never seen anybody like me before. I convinced the third shift that the second floor was haunted.
Oh, geez. Oh, God.
Oh, listen, that's just a little bit of what I used to do. I came back to my room one time and there was a guy sitting there, and I said, and I did my best Clint Eastwood. I said, and who might you be?
Oh.
And he said, I'm the psychiatrist. What are you doing here? So I'm here to help you adjust to the fact that you'll be in a wheelchair for the rest of your life. And I said, listen, Slick, I said, are you a Freudian or a Jungian? He kind of stopped. He said, I'm a Freudian. I said, well, I'm a Jungian. Let me tell you something. Not only am I going to walk out of this place, but I'm going to stop by your office when I do, and I'm going to kick your ass so far up between your shoulder blades, you're going to look like a goddamn hunchback. Now get out of my room and don't you ever come back.
Oh, God.
And this guy was stunned.
Yeah.
He was stunned. And I walked out of the place. And we're getting ready to leave. And I said, I got to stop by the psychiatrist's office. And my wife says, no, you're not. Get in the car. Yeah. But I did all sorts of crazy stuff there. One time it's run by Catholics.
Okay.
Right? And there's a nun that was the head of it. And we were having our UFO conference, and Kathy was coming to pick me up to take me down to it. So I was sitting in this little lobby, like where the elevators are on the second floor. And this woman comes out and she said, you're Frederick Lane? I said, yeah, who are you, Toots? And she goes, I'm Sister Mary Mengele or Goebbels or one of those Nazi bastards. I don't know. And she said, you're going to that flying saucer thing? I said, no, I'm going down to spend time with people who have double majors in PhD in physics and astronomy and astrology and biology. I said, when I come back, if you want to come down to my room, we'll talk about the Holy Ghost, the talking snake, and the 2 Jewish zombies. And by the way, where did you get that dress and those shoes? They're awful.
Oh, no.
The nurses are in this little back room, and they can hear and they came out, they're laughing. They go, do you know who that was? I go, yes. And now she knows who I am.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, when I all the craziness, and oh God, I did crazy things there. When I was getting ready to leave, the head civilian woman, she came in and she said, you're all anybody is talking about in this place. We've never seen anything like it. She said, everybody comes in and says, what did Fred do today? What did he? She said, energize this place. And she goes, we'd like to know if you'd like to volunteer here. I
Oh,
said, have you lost your mind?
wow.
But I did. I volunteered there for a while, and um, I enjoyed the hell out of it. I really did. People said, oh, it must have been terrible. No, no. I had a good time.
I think that having that fire is very important when you're going through stuff like that.
Yeah,
It
it is.
it's definitely what pulls you through. I know when I certainly wasn't as memorable as you were as a hospital guest, but when we had met, I had a couple of just like 2 months after we had met, almost died.
Yeah, geez.
And spent a week in the hospital. And when I walked in there, I didn't know what was wrong with me. I knew I couldn't breathe. I knew that I couldn't breathe for like the last week, and I couldn't handle that anymore. So I went in there, and they were shocked that I was walking in there. My body was attacked. I had ketoacidosis, which means my blood was basically acid.
Yeah,
And they were shocked that I was in such good spirits.
yeah,
And I maintained that the whole time, the whole entire
sure.
time, because I don't know, you just have to, because even if you're dying, I still don't want to be miserable.
I could do things physically. See, the day I had my stroke, I had run 3 miles and done 500 push-ups.
Wow.
Okay, I was in great shape. I was in tremendous shape. And when I had the stroke, and I went in, and they had stationary bicycles up there, we're in the therapy room. So I said to one of the PTs, I said, "What? How long has anybody ever ridden this at its highest level?" They said, "Well, the PT's ride it." He says, "We've ridden it at level 13." He says, "I says, and what's the longest you've ever ridden at that level?" And he goes, "Well, the record for us is 47 minutes." I looked at him, I went, 47 whole minutes?
Right.
And he went, "Well, yeah." So one day they didn't have any weights heavy enough for me. I mean, so I finally convinced him, just let me ride the bike, right? And so I got on the bike, cranked it up to 13, turned my music on, and I rode it they stopped me after I'd ridden it an hour and 10 minutes. They said, "We have to stop you." And they had and when they did, I startled because I wasn't there. I was out on the peninsula.
Yeah.
In my mind, that's
Yeah.
where I was. And that's why I could ride the damn thing, because I really wasn't, I was not there.
Right.
And they just couldn't understand how I could do that.
Mhm.
And I looked at him right in the eye and I said, "That's because I'm not from this planet."
Oh no.
Listen, the first day I went up to therapy, the first day I went up there, and I went up, and I'm in a wheelchair, of course, and I went up, and this kid comes over and he goes, "Hi." He says, "I'm Bobby." And I looked down, I kind of tilted my head to the side, and I went, "Uh-huh." And he said, "I'm going to be your therapist."
Oh.
Uh-huh. And he hands me this plastic thing with rubber bands on it. He says, "Now I want you to squeeze this 10 times." And he holds my right hand up with your right hand, and then 10 times with your left hand. Uh-huh. He says, "And then I want you to do it 3 times each side." Uh-huh. So he looks at the guy next to me. He says, "Dave," he said, "listen, count, make sure that okay." So he walks away. He comes back maybe 5 minutes later, he says, "How's he doing?" And Dave says, "Well, he's only working on his second set." He goes, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, he did 150 with his right hand and 170 in his left hand." And he's up to, and I looked at him and I said, "Hey, here's your toy bag. Do you have stuff adults can play with here?" And he realized I was screwing with him. And after, we got to be really good friends after that. We
Good.
did. We got to be good friends. He loved me. He said, "Jesus." He goes, "I love working with you." Jeez. One time they put these stimulation on your arm, these 4 to 20 milliamp to stimulate the muscles.
Mhm.
Okay. And that's what I worked with. I was an instrumentation man. So I said, "Hey," I said, "how about getting the head of the place, the head of the therapy place here, to do the stimulation?" And he looks at me and I said, "Come on, man." He smiled. He said, "Oh, God." So he got the head of it to come out. And she comes out and she goes, "Hey, everybody gather around." She goes, "I haven't done this in a while. I want to make sure I get it right." Now, if you're planning a joke, you couldn't have asked for a better setup. You just couldn't have asked for one. So she put these things on my arm. She hits the button and I grab my throat.
Oh God.
I thought she was going to have an apoplexy. Couple of these therapists, they're on the floor laughing. They can't get up there laughing so hard. She goes, "Why would you do that?" I said, "I know, it just seemed like the thing to do."
She saw her whole career flash before her eyes.
You know. Well, I was sitting there one time, and this guy with a suit is sitting next to me up there. I'm waiting to do the exercise stuff, and he's talking. And I said, "What are you here for?" And he said, "Oh, 4 to 20 milliamp." I said, "I love that." I said, "Of course, you can do 1 to 5 volts." I said, "But 4 to 20 milliamp gives you a better range and stuff." And he goes, we started talking. He goes, "Geez," he goes, "You really know this stuff, you know." And they call him and they say, "We're ready to start the meeting." He gets up and he goes, "Isn't he coming in?" And they go, "No, he's a patient here." He goes, "Yeah, well, he should be in there because he knows more about this than I do."
Right.
So, but anyway, that's how I approached being in, working and um, getting over a stroke, and how the mental attitude is so important.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know.
I'd agree with that. It's the best medicine you can have is,
Oh, absolutely,
you know,
absolutely.
being
You
mentally
know,
prepared.
they had a plastic baseball bat up there, right?
Mhm.
And I said, "Hey, give me that." And he goes over and gets it. And I said, "Take those koosh balls." And I took my walker because I was using a walker type, and I set it aside. I thought these people were going to have a stroke. "What are you doing? Oh my God!" I said, "Just throw the ball." And it was in my batting stance. Now, what they didn't know was I was a hitting instructor. Okay. Do you know what a timing step is?
I don't know. Mm-mm.
Okay, that's where you see the batter and you see his front foot towards the pitcher, and he'll lift it up off the ground and put it down.
Oh yeah, okay.
Okay, that's a timing step. He's timing the pitch. So I said, "Throw me one of those koosh balls." He throws the ball, and that left foot came right up and right down, just like. And he looked at me and he goes, "You shouldn't be able to do that." And I said, "I keep telling you, I'm not from this planet."
Right.
You know. But I at this point, as I realized that it was muscle memory.
Hmm. Yeah.
So now when I talk to the kids again and I tell them that story, I said, if you're with somebody, maybe they knitted, get them 2 sticks to bang together. If
Sure.
you're knitting or something, something that they probably still have some muscle memory and that, And anyway, I've been doing that now for about 6 years.
Wow.
And they keep asking me back, and the one professor who runs the program, she goes, you do things with those kids that we just don't ever think of.
Hmm.
They said, the kids come out of there. He said, after they talk to you and work with you, they said, they're different, so.
Wow. Very, very neat. Well, that is a good suggestion though, because you're right. Your body will just do what it does.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it. I didn't.
Yeah.
He threw that thing and my foot went up and down, and we just stood there, and he just looked at me and I looked at him, and I went, whoa, whoa.
That's what my body does.
This is it's my body, and this is what it does.
Wow. I mean, you could
Now
very
get
well.
Get me a beer.
You could.
Oh, you know what else helped me getting through that?
What's that?
Brownies.
Brownies. Okay.
Yeah. Special brownies.
Special brownies. Oh, okay.
Alice B. Tokless brownies.
They do help a lot of things.
Oh, I want to tell you. One time, the priest came in and he was blessing me. Of course, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in any of that stuff.
Sure.
And I said to my wife, and she goes, "Yeah." She goes, "You can bless." I said, "You can?" She goes, "Yeah, anybody can bless. Catholics can bless." And that's what I am, before I became an atheist. Great. So she comes in and I said, "Oh, Cal had a great day today." I said, "Man, I was going down the hallway. I was blessing doorways. I was blessing lint. Go make that sponge. God bless you." She goes, No. You can only do that to people. I went, "Oh, shit." I said, "I wasted a whole day blessing stuff." Damn.
Well, that was the holiest day for that building it's ever seen.
Oh, I want to tell you.
That's fantastic. Well, Fred,
Aren't you glad that you asked me to be on your show?
I am. I'm having a great time.
Great. Great.
You could.
I hope your audience is going to have a great time.
I think they're going to enjoy the talk very much.
Good.
We've had a lot of ghost people on lately. And as much as I appreciate those guests, I think people were ready for something different. And
I have a ghost story for you.
Oh, okay. Let's hear it.
I have a lot of friends. Most of them are women, and the reason is because I asked a woman one time why women. And they said, because you listen to us. She says that's why. And so anyway, I had this friend who was a professional dominatrix, and she had a one of her slaves, but they were very much in love and everything. And he just suddenly he died, and she was just crushed, And so I went down to Meadville, which is like 30 miles from Erie, and went for the viewing, And on my way home, I know my way around pretty well. I'm one of those people who never gets lost. Okay. And all of a sudden I'm thinking, where the hell am I? And here I'm on the road where this kid lived. And I'm looking I got to pull a map out because this was before GPS. I put a map out and looking, and I suddenly felt something just not right. And I folded the map up. He's sitting in the seat next to me.
Interesting.
And he said, take care of her.
Oh.
And I said, okay.
Sure.
Mary, what am I going to do? Take care of her. But yeah, I had and then one time we were in Ontario, we were in Kitchener, and we were staying at a friend's house, and I was up in the one bedroom and Kathy was in this other one, and because they were kind of small. And in the middle of the night, I get this feel like somebody's tugging on the bed sheets, the bedclothes, right? And I kind of rolled around and there's more tugging, and I kind of woke up and I looked. There's an old lady standing at the bottom of the bed, holding onto the covers.
Oh.
And oh Jesus, So at this point I said, okay. So I picked the pillow and stuff, went downstairs and slept on the couch.
Sure.
My wife, next morning, I told her, I said, listen, I told her what happened. She goes, oh my God, she goes, whatever you do, don't tell Miller, because that will freak him out. So anyway, we're sitting there at breakfast, and Kathy says, tell us a little bit about the house. That's what he says. Well, he said it would belong to an old couple, he said, and then started talking about it. Then he said, yeah, he said, and then one night she heard something in his bedroom, and she went in and she was tugging on the bedclothes on the bottom of the bed trying to wake him up, and he had died.
Wow.
And that's exactly what she was doing when I was in the bed, is shaking the bedclothes, see whether or not, and we never told him. We never told him because it freaked him right out, So those are a couple of ghost stories.
Just to keep with the theme of the guests lately.
Yeah, I don't want to feel left out or I just talked about UFOs with Tommy G's.
Well, usually that's what this show is. So the fact that we've had a bunch of paranormal people on has been very different compared to the usual show. It's not been bad, just different.
Well, I hope this is one of your highest rated shows.
I hope so. I hope it is.
And you have to pay me for this because I need the money.
If I make money from it, I will certainly share you some. We'll see how that goes. 4 years now, and still not a billion.
Is that how long you've been doing this radio show? 4 years?
Almost, yeah, 4 years this spring. So getting very close, but yeah, quite a while.
So outside of me, who was your most interesting guest?
Oh,
outside of me.
So honestly, we don't do a lot of guests on the show. It's usually topical. This has been a kind of a different. When we do have guests on the show,
cold cream, right?
What's that?
Like cold cream, it's topical.
Usually there's something to it. So guests are just kind of something that we'll do to fill in the time, so that way I don't have to put 10 hours of research into an episode every single week.
Right.
But I don't know. That's a good question. I've had a lot of really good guests on. We've had some people that have come back. And usually the guests choose who we have on. Is how that goes. Of course, I have made exceptions to the rule here and there, depending on the people that I like and would like to have on. But yeah, I don't know. Probably, Alan Greenfield was really interesting. He's an interesting guy. He had lots of stories, and man, he was wild. I think you guys, if you haven't met Alan Greenfield, you should. I think you guys would get along great. It's a very interesting fella. So
I got a guy you need to meet. He's not as crazy as you are.
Yeah, he is. He's something. The episode is titled Alan fucking Greenfield because that's how he introduced himself. So
was that like a baptismal name?
Yeah, it might have been.
What do you think? Oh, let's call him fucking. What do you think? All right, let's put that in there.
He is a former Thelemite, so it could be something along those lines. A former Thelemite. Thelemite, yeah.
I'm not familiar with that.
Thelemites are, oh gosh, that's a whole other rabbit hole. They're interesting. They're people that followed basically the works of Crowley, Aleister Crowley.
Okay.
But it kind of predates Crowley even further. It's very interesting. He tells us stories about how there's been, they've tried to kill him sometimes, and
Well,
ritualistic orgies and things like that.
Well, ritualistic. Oh, you got to introduce me to him. Boy, I
That's
haven't
what
been
I'm
to a
saying.
ritualistic orgy in so long.
I think you guys would get along great.
Oh, well, probably we would.
Fred Lane and Alan fucking Greenfield. I think it would be a match made in heaven. Um, but anyway, so we're kind of getting up close to our closing time here. Do you have
Okay.
any further remarks that you would like to share with the audience? Maybe bits of advice, or where they can find you, or how they can support what you do?
Well, if they could send me money, small bills, non-traceable.
Sure. Yeah.
No, if you want to get a hold of us, then what you do is you go to the MUFON site, you report your sighting or whatever,
Mhm.
and then it's wherever, depending on where you are, it gets kicked back to us. If it's like within Pennsylvania or any, but other than that, then you have other people. We've had cases where people have contacted us, and we said, well, listen, you have a man near you who does this, and you should contact him.
Mhm.
So this has been a lot of fun. It really has. The time has just flown by.
It's so easy,
You know?
right?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. When you're having fun and like I said, from the first time I met you, I thought, oh my goodness gracious, I've got to meet her. I've got to meet her. You were fascinating.
Oh, well,
and I love fascinating people.
thank you.
You
I'm just another weirdo.
Well, you know what? Next time I talk to Nick, I'll ask him if he'd like to do your show.
Yeah. Tell Nick to get a hold of me. I would love to sit down and finally have a dedicated conversation with the guy. It's just he's all the way in Texas and I'm all the way in Ohio.
Yeah.
We don't get a lot of chances to meet each other.
No. And I hope you're going to come to Erie for Grandpa. I really do, so we can, sit down together, have a cup of coffee,
Yeah, I'll be back at some point.
laugh at the square people.
The Eric and Carrie, fantastic people.
Aren't they though? Oh my God,
the
they're
best.
great.
Literally the best. I mean, I just got one of Eric's Cool Ghoul shirts, and I got the Bride of Frankenstein,
Oh, okay.
and it just came in, and included with it is a bunch of, so fun little extras. They're like old, trading cards, wrestling trading cards, and
Yeah.
all kinds of old trading cards with them, and it's just so wholesome. I mean, I was
Yeah.
more excited about that little gift than I was about the shirt, and they're just like that. And of course, they've got an open door policy with me. They're all the time. They're like, come up and hang out, and I want to.
Yeah. They we first met him and we saw the kind of work that he does as far as the paintings
Yeah.
and stuff. So anytime we went anywhere where there was paintings, if they weren't too expensive, we'd pick them up and just give them to him. Let him.
Yeah, absolutely.
We got 3 of his paintings on our mantle in the living room.
They're so good.
They are. They really are. They're fun.
Yeah, it is
Fun
fun.
paintings. And you're right. He and his wife are just incredibly
Oh, yeah.
great people.
Yeah.
God, they're fun.
And they do a lot for the Erie community up there.
Yes, they do. Yes,
They're
they do.
very much all about artists and giving people that exposure and getting community together and having a spot for the weirdos in the area.
Yeah, like us.
Like us. So I'll definitely, I will be up there at some point. It's just trying to decide. I want to come and do cryptid mini golf up there on the peninsula. I hear they have a cryptid mini golf, and
On the peninsula?
that's what I think on the peninsula. I believe so.
No, there's one. There's a cryptid miniature golf course, but it's not near the peninsula. It's out on Route 8, I think it is.
Oh,
And it's got all the holes. They have different Bigfoot, flying saucers, and all that sort. But they also have little plaques to tell you what went on. These are all things that happened in the Erie County, Erie area.
really?
Yeah, it's a pretty neat place.
It's even cooler than I thought.
Yes, it's very cool.
Yeah, I definitely want
Very
to check
cool.
that out. So that's what I keep telling them. I only ever get to see them when we're working, and so I'm like,
Right.
I'd love to just hang out with you guys when we're not.
Yeah. Well, listen, if you do come up this year, we'll definitely have to sit down. Maybe come over to the house and sit and shoot the breeze with us. And
Yeah.
by the way, what did you do to get through the quarantine, the pandemic? What did you do?
This.
Okay.
Yep, I started the show. I went around to gas was cheap then, so it was really easy to travel around.
Yeah.
And nobody was working, so all my friends were available. So we would travel around to different small towns, collecting stories and experiences, and immersing ourselves in the cultures there as far as their, folklore and creatures go.
Right.
And that's when I started filming my Mothman documentary.
Uh-huh.
And of course, compiling all my Mothman research. So that's what I did. Chase monsters during the pandemic.
Sure. Well, what we did was we discovered old radio shows.
Oh, okay.
And so what we would do is that rather than watch television, we'd sit out on our front porch and we would listen to The Shadow. Oh God, who else? Richard Diamond, Tracer of Lost Persons, Room 13. All these old radio shows. And we would sit and listen to them. And that's what we would do at night rather than pay attention to the news or anything. So
Yeah.
it was kind of neat to listen to those old stories,
Absolutely. I've talked to a lot of people during that time. We all had time to, and got to know different people. But just because of the timing of it, I was certainly career building and networking.
Sure. Do you know? Did you remember hearing about the radio show The Shadow? Who knows what he was?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know The Shadow.
No, you know who the first Shadow was?
I don't.
Orson Welles.
I believe that.
He was Lamont Cranston. He was the Shadow.
I believe that about him. Yeah.
And then the other one. Did you ever see The Third Man?
I haven't seen The Third Man.
The Third Man. Oh, you got to watch that. And he's in that too. The Life and Times of Harry Lime. And there's also radio shows with him as Harry Lime.
Very cool.
The third. Oh yeah, it's very cool. If you ever get a chance to listen to him, that's a great way to spend an evening.
Yeah, we've considered on this show starting a radio show just because it's so fascinating. It's a lost art, really.
It is. Theater of the Mind.
Is that another one?
No. It's Theater of the Mind.
Theater of the Mind. I got you.
Yeah. You don't have any, visuals.
Right. It's something that we.
You're not supposed to be smoking that stuff on the air. You know that, don't you?
Well, that's why my show is so good. No, it is something we've considered doing. No, there are some podcasts that do that. I think Old Gods of Appalachia is one of them. And it's very popular. I've never listened to it personally. But again, it's a lost art and it's hard to make it good. And so it might revive here. If I ever had the time to do something like that, I think I would be interested. But I'm not much of a script writer, to be honest with you. So there's that. But
have you ever listened to the radio broadcast of the War of the Worlds?
I haven't. No, not the original.
Oh, you got to listen to that because that's Orson Welles too.
Yeah, that is Orson Welles. I mean, of course, I'm familiar with what it is, but I've just never sat and really taken the time to listen to it.
We're going to listen to it tomorrow night.
Very cool. That's actually not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Maybe I will do. Maybe I'll make that my Halloween.
There you go. Yeah, new Halloween tradition.
Something spooky. It's and for people that want something a little more hardcore, you can listen to the Jim Jones tape. Just kidding. Don't do that. It's real depressing. Don't listen to it.
Oh no,
terrible.
Well, listen, I'm going to let you go here,
Sure.
and I really thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and be a part of your show.
Yeah.
And hopefully the listeners will swamp your show with requests to have the funny guy back.
If they want
get the weirdo UFO guy back on there. We really liked him.
Yeah. If they request it, we'll have to get you back on next time we do guests.
Sure.
So.
Sure. Well, anyway, thank you very, very much for allowing me to come on. It was great fun. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. And then for all the listeners, I'll see you guys back here next Wednesday.